Chapter 71. You are listening at novelfull.audio. No. What is he doing? Ava, Eli and Venus couldn't help but almost faint. They had been thinking of all the ways Diane could deal with this. Maybe burn the marriage contract and kidnap her later when less people were around. Or, maybe use the big sect tournament to kill Akihiko before he could do anything to Madeline. But never did they think he'd do it like this. Who is this guy? Diane. That's Diane. Ha! Wasn't he dead? Oliver looked at the boy who had seemed to mature by leaps and bounds with nothing but shock. He was absolutely certain that he had run Diane through the heart. Even if he wasn't dead at the point of contact, there was no way that he would survive such a fall. Pillar family leader Sapientia was trembling as he held on to his wife's hand. He didn't know if he'd have the strength to kill his daughter's love again. Especially in front of her. He was conflicted. He had no idea what to do. How had this happened? The geniuses of the big sects looked over all at once. This is the guy she fell for. He's nothing but a pretty boy, said Lehabim with a look of disdain. The more he looked at Diane's face, the more he hated it. I thought he was dead, wasn't he? Said Orbis. But, isn't it more interesting this way? This wedding was getting boring. He is quite handsome, said Jessica licking her lips subconsciously. If only he was as beautiful as he was handsome. Don't be like that, my love. What can looks do for you in the cultivation world? Isn't that why he quote-unquote died in the first place? He won't even get out of here alive. Although Jessica didn't like being called Orbis love, she had to admit that he was right. Even though the Pillar family leader of the Kami clan was weaker than the seeded geniuses, the same could not be said of the big sect elder. So even they as incomparable geniuses didn't dare to make a fuss here no matter how much they loved Madeline. Yet, this boy seemed to want to do exactly that. Madeline slowly turned. She couldn't hide her trembling anymore and her voice couldn't leave her throat. But, she started running. She started running as fast as her locked cultivation would allow her. Akihiko finally snapped out of his sheer surprise. Where do you think you're going? He was about to reach out when a flash of sword chi nearly severed his arm. He fell backwards and landed on his ass pathetically as he tried to dodge. If you dare try to touch her again, you won't even know how you died. This time, the voice's joking tone was nowhere to be heard. It alone seemed to make their hearts tremble. The crowd shuddered as Diane lifted his foot slowly. Are you sure he's weak? Whispered Jessica after a moment. Orbis didn't know what to say. It was clear none of them had seen how he attacked. Yet, the domineering sword scar on the stairs wasn't an illusion. Madeline was stumbling down the stairs, still unable to speak. Big sister. Delia called out as she noticed Madeline falling down. Diane's descending foot fell to the ground. In what felt like a flash he was already before Madeline, embracing her tightly. Madeline gripped Diane's chest with both hands, sobbing. Her tears fell like a rain, the weakness of her fingers becoming clear as she failed to get a tight grasp of the young man before her. It seems like she really loves him. We can't pull them apart again, dear. I can't take that kind of pain, whispered Lady Sapientia to her husband. Pillar family head Sapientia shivered as he heard his wife's voice. He's so fast, wasn't he just in the aisle? How did he get to the stairs? He's so handsome. I mean strong. No wonder Madeline loves him. But, he's going to die soon, does it matter? The crowd's unneeded commentary seemed endless. In the stands of the Colosseum, the Storm family members looked on in interest. Ball licked his lips. That girl is the best I've seen. I'll have to savor her soon. Autumn snorted, you'll have to be strong enough to beat him first. He's just a small fry. Can't you tell he has no cultivation? How could I lose to such a weakling? You're ignorant. Don't you know that Tammy's elder brother didn't start cultivating until he was 18? He's a true genius. He was the reason why our branch was willing to take such a chance and break off from the Ragnar clan, Dagon said faintly. Yet, did you dare to fight him before he began to cultivate? Are you really trying to compare this nobody to first brother? Said Baal in disdain. Dagon didn't feel like arguing. If you really want to try him out, you'll get a chance later. But, I've warned you that your disgusting habits are going to get you killed one day. Baal didn't seem to be listening as he continued to lick his lips. Tammy remained silent, not knowing what to think. The boy she had once told should work hard to reach their level had in the blink of an eye reached such a high level of attainment. Let's see how you'll survive this. Madeline continued to sob, unwilling to let go of Diane's shirt. It seemed like she was trying to say something, but Diane couldn't understand. Why? Finally, Madeline took a deep breath. Although it was broken into a million parts, she finally got air into her lungs. You are really, W. or SWEP. Pants to my W. Wednesday D. Ding. Diane was stunned for a bit, before his booming laughter could be heard throughout the arena. Delia and Maying finally had relaxed smiles on their faces, almost as though they had forgotten the danger Diane was in. On the stage, while Akihiko was still sitting on the ground in a daze, Pillar family Elder Kami and Big Sect Elder Kami were fuming. You've got a lot of nerve. Good. Well done. You'll die here today. Boomed Big Sect leader Kami. However, Diane didn't seem to hear him, but he set aside a thought in his mind, essence gathering third stage. No big deal. Well, I wasn't properly dressed, but I brought you presents, Diane said with a beaming smile. He swung Madeline into his arms and an array formation appeared below him. He rose them up 20 meters in the air, and whether it was on purpose or not, positioned them directly in the center of the Colosseum. Chapter 72. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Everyone watched with a mixture of loathing, jealousy, or adoration as Diane gently placed the still shivering Madeline in his lap, letting her head rest on his chest. This is the first present. Diane pointed out toward their position in the skies. From today onwards, you'll be the center of the world. No one will bully you. No one will hurt you. No one will dare do anything you don't like while I'm here. The crowd sucked in a breath. They weren't sure how to take this. This boy was about to die, but he was still in the mood for speaking sweet nothings to a girl. It was indeed not easy for anyone here to rise 20 meters into the air with such ease. But, the Kami clan was one of archery. I'll kill him, said Hashim, and Lehabim fumed. Before, they had no choice but to not take action for fear of Big Sect Elder Kami, but this was a completely new situation. How could they sit back as a boy with no backing took the woman they wanted? Jessica, though, looked on with sparkling eyes, before turning to Orbis. If you could ever be half that romantic, I'd love you. Orbis' eyes shined with passion as though accepting a challenge. Madeline shivered as she heard Diane's words. The tears she had willed to stop started flowing again. Diane smiled. The second present is actually a little guy we'll raise together. The crowd was in an uproar. Even if she loves you, you can't say things like that here. Yeah. If you wanted to be a pervert, you should have chosen another woman. Diane didn't seem to hear the crowd. But, Madeline had taken his words the same way because her breath was hurried, and her face was red. She was beginning to squirm in his lap. Don't get a boner, don't get a boner, don't get a boner. Although Diane was thinking this, his heart ached thinking of the pain Madeline was suffering through. She wouldn't have reacted so violently if not for it being so close to the winter solstice. With a flick of his finger, a fury and scaled puppy-looking creature jumped out and licked the tears off of Madeline's face. This is Little Black. I found him while traveling. I'm not sure what species he is, but I thought you'd like cute things, so this is my second present. The crowd seemed to collectively sigh in relief. Of course, Diane lied about Little Black's origins. Although he didn't care about danger to himself, He wasn't willing to have that lead to trouble for little Black. At least my Madeline didn't end up with a pervert, said Jessica with a harumph. He's adorable, said Madeline with a giggle as she happily accepted little Black into her arms, still leaning on Diane's chest as they sat in the sky, gentle snow still softly falling. Little Black seemed to be trying to catch some on his tongue, which made Madeline giggle more. She's truly an angel. AI. For my third present, I know you love music, so I have to give you the best. A silver lyre appeared in Diane's hands. That's a half-step master level lyre. Making a musical instrument of that high quality. Where did this kid get that from? Even Madeline was stunned. But she didn't refuse. She saw Diane as her future husband. When would a wife ever say no to a present from her husband? Madeline smiled gently, kissing Diane on the cheek. Hee, if you kiss me like that now, who knows what you'll do when you see my next presents. The crowd was in an uproar again. There's no mistaking his words this time. Definitely a pervert. How could Madeline love him? Madeline looked up at Diane, blinking innocently. There's more. Of course, you think I'd come back if I didn't have the cure to your illness. What kind of man would I be then? Madeline's eyes widened. Really? She choked, tears falling. Pillar family elder Cammy finally snapped, do you think you can talk such nonsense in my precinct? Bang. 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 Before Elder Cammy would even finish talking, 10 magnificent arrays had appeared behind Diane. They began to rotate fiercely before one majestic weapon after another was fired out. No one could see the weapons until they were already surrounding Elder Cammy, impaled into the ground. Pillar family head Cammy was shivering in panic. He hadn't even seen what happened, but somehow 10 spears made of fantastic golden energy encoded in crystals left massive holes in the ground around him. Had they shifted just the slightest bit, wouldn't he be dead? How was this possible? The crowd was silent. Speak out of turn again, and I won't even give you a chance to defend yourself later. I'll just directly kill you and your whole family, Diane said faintly. The spears flickered out of existence as he turned back to Madeline, who was now staring up at him with a smile. What a genius, I can't even tell how many wills he used in that attack. Did you see it, Orbis? A dark-skinned man with long dread spoke. Crystal will, the rarity of such an Earth-type will, my Earth-bound sect needs a genius like him. Big sect elder Cammy gripped his fists. He knew if the other sect leaders decided this kid was a genius, it would be impossible for him to kill him. They would all want to recruit him to their sects in preparations for the world tournament. Who wouldn't want him? This was the only reason he hadn't attacked yet. As soon as he saw Diane's sword chi and movement technique, he could tell the other elders were moved. Do you trust me? Diane asked Madeline. With no hesitation, Madeline nodded yes. With a flick of his finger, a pill about 3 cm wide appeared. This pill will erase all of your cultivation. With a flick of his hands, Diane slowly brought it to Madeline's mouth. She opened with no hesitation, not asking why her cultivation had to be erased or if she'd ever get it back. But her family wasn't the same. They were all pale-faced, wondering what would happen next. After helping Madeline dissolve the pill, Diane pulled out another one. What grade pill is that? It must be at least master level, maybe more. Chapter 73. You are listening at novelfull.audio. How the hell is this kid getting all these treasures? Thought the big sect leaders. Although the previous pill Diane had brought out seemed common. With their key senses, they could tell it was extraordinary. If it wasn't for their wanting to uphold their prestige, they might have went to directly snatch this boy's things. Diane leaned into Madeline's ear and whispered softly, causing her condition to act up again. This is called the Constitution Awakening Pill. It'll awaken your constitution to 100% and then you'll be the genius you once were again. We'll stand tall together. Madeline nodded, taking the pill. But, as Diane was helping her circulate the pill, he couldn't help but frown. He sensed the impurities of another medicinal pill that wasn't the cleansing pill in Madeline. Moreover, with his key senses, he could tell it was a healing pill that Madeline had taken recently. And, considering the aura used to circulate the pill, Diane immediately knew that it was Akihiko. Diane was trembling in anger. He had guesses of what had happened, but he had to focus on helping Madeline first. Such trivial impurities wouldn't affect such a high-grade pill, but the story behind it would send Diane into a rage. As the seconds passed, Madeline was somehow becoming more and more beautiful. She was emanating the aura of a goddess, her skin had become fairer and smoother. She was absolutely without flaws. The Sapientia family was trembling with happiness. It's really the cure, dear. Libro stood at the back of the family, smiling in satisfaction. The Pillar family leader had tears in his eyes. How did this kid manage to do something the main branch couldn't? Finally, Madeline awoke, smiling brilliantly. Diane, thank you. There should be no thanks between us, Diane said with a light smile. As soon as you feel you have perfect control, you can start cultivating again. Madeline lifted her hand and touched the side of Diane's face, causing him to lightly grip her wrist before he spoke. Will you let me see what you went through? Although Madeline didn't know how Diane planned to do it, she still nodded. Soon, she felt her memories being gone through and she felt that Diane had opened himself up to her too. Diane trembled as he felt Madeline's pain, but, when Diane got to today's event, the cheery atmosphere in the Colosseum suddenly dropped into complete darkness. Diane's eyes were red as he stroked Madeline's cheeks gently. I'll be right back, Madeline nodded as she went to play with Little Black who had been laying on her lap. Diane jumped down from the sky. Without any arrays or wills, he slammed heavily into the ground. Slowly he walked over to the distraught Akihiko. So, Diane said faintly, it seems that you think you can hit my woman, The crowd was in an uproar. Akihiko hit such an angel. How dare he? You must have thought you were pretty clever, right? You were going to drain Madeline of all her potential, then claim as if you were just a genius when you're actually just trash. A sword light flashed. Agag. What do you think you're doing? The big sect elder couldn't hold it in anymore, and before he could be stopped, he had already flashed towards Diane. Fuck, we didn't keep enough tabs on him, Orbis was agitated. He needed to know the secrets of Crystal Will, it would multiply his power by many folds. How could he let this genius die? Seems like a genius is about to die. The Windblade sect elder shook her head bitterly. The sect leaders could only watch as big sect elder Kami sped towards Diane. Just as the big sect elder was going to reach Diane, a 3 cm wide pill appeared in Diane's hands. He immediately crushed it and used his wind will to guide the powder into the elder's 7 orifices. Boom! The elder came crashing to the ground. The crown was stunned. What was that he just used? It looked like a powder. A powder that could stop an essence-gathering expert. Chenglei, who had been standing in the back this whole time with a calm expression on his face, finally frowned. He had thought that this was all a fa.ade and that as soon as the elder acted, this would all end. But, who knew that with just a flick of his hand, Diane could cripple an essence-gathering realm expert. Another light of sword chi flashed. Agag. Akihiko's other arm flew off. The sight of splattering blood and the sound of the bone-curdling scream was one no one would ever forget. Why that you'll never get away with this? The Kami God clan values him greatly. He was accepted by the ancestors. You're trampling on the pride of a God clan. The big sect elder was raging, he felt his cultivation dropping more and more as he watched pathetically from the ground. God clan. Diane said faintly, should I care about something like that? Arrogant. This isn't just arrogance, it's ignorance. God clans aren't something you can imagine. The big sect elders were shifting in agitation. Another blazing light of sword chi flashed. Akihiko writhed on the ground, only a single limb left. The once pure snow was dyed in blood. I'll tell you all of this right now. I don't care what sect you're from. I don't care who your parents are. I don't care who your lovers are. I don't care who your children are, Diane continued softly. Another light of sword chi flashed. Just like that, Pillar family leader Kami died. Sliced in half and with incomparable grievances. I don't care if you have god-level blood. Another flash. Akihiko had lost his last limb. I don't care if you think you rule this world or if you're in an unreachable cultivation realm. A weapons hell formation began spinning fiercely right above Akihiko's head. Slowly, a spear began to, almost to agonizing degree, pierce his head. It sheared apart his skin before slowly working into his skull. If you touch someone I care about, I'll kill you. The pain Akihiko was experiencing was so excruciating he tore his vocal cords apart, leaving him gurgling in his final moments. Chapter 74. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Blood spurted from Akihiko's head as he breathed his last. The crowd shivered. He's crazy. Ball licked his lips. Interesting, it was faint, but he directed some killing intent at us, don't you think? You think he could tell I wanted to taste his woman? He said with a disgusting smirk on his face. Tammy shivered. She had felt it too. He knows something. The Storm family juniors didn't answer, instead adopting curious expressions on their faces. What they didn't know is that Diane had allowed them to feel his killing intent on purpose to set a chess piece in motion. So, we get to fight the seeded geniuses and him. This tournament will be interesting, said Dagon and Blade. Diane leaped back to Madeline, holding her in his arms again. I almost forgot, I have another present for you. This was left behind by my master. I hope you like it, Diane said with a smile. In a flash, an incomparably pure dress appeared. It was inlaid with so much energy, that it was blinding. There's actually a hair piece to go with it, Diane said, pulling it out. That's another half-step master treasure. I'm going to pull my hair out. The big sects might have one of those each, and it's reserved for their supreme elders. Yet, he pulled out so many. Madeline blinked looking at the dress and hair piece. I can't let you keep wearing this black, now can I? Said Diane with a smile, this dress will make it easier to sense wills you want to learn, and the pin is a defensive treasure. Don't worry, you can change here, I'll put up a concealment array. Madeline nodded, taking the dress, but first she turned to Diane, no using your innate aurora to peek. The crowd sighed in appreciation for her purity. I promise. Diane laughed, stretching out a pinky. Madeline pouted, you didn't need to answer so quickly. Maybe I was going to promise then peek anyway. Diane grinned wildly. Madeline playfully hit Diane before the concealment formation appeared around her. Moments later, blinding lights caused the crowd to squint as Diane looking on proudly. It was like a goddess had descended from the skies. Are you watching, Mom? Dad? Your son's done pretty well for himself, don't you think? Thought Diane with incomparable pride shining in his eyes. Madeline stepped out. Her eyes had lost their previous dullness and now had a shining gold. Her carbon-framed glasses had morphed in crystal-framed ones, and her hair was up in her usual style. The hairpin perfectly complemented the white cheen pao that clung to her curves. The dress reached to her feet, a long slit following along her leg. The sparkles of white and gold seemed intent on forcing the world's energies on converging upon it. I can't see the rank of that dress, can any of you? An old lady whose hair seemed to alternate between braids of white and vines, asked. The big sect elders shook their heads. They had no answer for the Green Blade sect's elder. Diane was in a daze. Wow, Benove calm, Madeline giggled, her gentle laughter causing flutters in the heart of the crowd. Wife, it looks like we almost made the worst mistake of our lifetimes, Lady Sapientia nodded as happy tears streamed down her face. Oliver trembled as he looked down at his hands, feeling disgusted with himself. Pertinacious smiled lightly, which was actually quite rare for him. Diane slowly walked to Madeline, grabbing her hands. Are you willing to stand at the top of the world with me? Diane's voice was soft and gentle, almost as though he couldn't see anyone but the woman in front of him and he didn't care if another could hear him. Madeline's eyes glistened, yes. Diane leaned down slowly, kissing Madeline's soft, pink lips. As though he was afraid to break her, his actions were impossibly gentle and caring. Madeline's face and neck flushed with red, her heart fluttering wildly and her blood rushing to her ears. Never did she think her first kiss would be like this. I'm gonna kill him. The geniuses raged all at once. Diane pulled away and looked into her golden eyes. Madeline light punched him. You sure made a girl wait quite a long time for her first kiss. Diane scratched his head awkwardly, timing. Swear I was looking for the perfect timing. Madeline giggled, grabbing Diane's hand. She faced the crowd together with him. Diane's eyes flashed with battle intent. Now that the most important thing is complete, the other thing I came here to do today is settle some grudges and beat down some geniuses. Who'll play with me? A devilishly handsome grin appeared on Diane's face. Arrogant. I'll crush him. Diane smiled at Madeline. It seems like you've gained me quite a few fans. Madeline giggled, grabbing onto Diane's arm. If you can't deal with this much, I can always get a harem of men to do it for me. The crowd surged. Choose me. No me. Diane chuckled bitterly. You really know how to stir up trouble. Diane's eyes flashed in seriousness. Since you all want to fight, let's get this tournament started then. I'll be sure to beat it into all of you, one by one. My woman isn't someone you can have designs on. Diane's domineering aura surged, covering the whole of the Colosseum. Madeline smiled while looking at Diane's profile. But suddenly, she had a funny thought. Diane, you don't plan on fighting in sweatpants and a wet, snot-filled T-shirt, do you? She teased him mercilessly as though it wasn't her fault things were like this to begin with. Diane smiled bitterly. I actually have a battle Chong Pao, but it would be a waste if these geniuses are only at this level. You. The geniuses were in an uproar. In the stands, the Storm family geniuses smirked. He sure has a lot of nerve, sneered Blade. Well, he just won that shot an essence gathering expert. Can you do that? Blade's twin sister Calidora teased him. Chapter 75. You are listening at novelfull.audio. PFT Women. All you see is a pretty face and you're already infatuated. How could the tournament rules allow him to use that powder? I'll crush him. Women. Why don't you take a look in the mirror? At least wipe the drool off your face and stop staring at his woman before you say those words to me, harumphed Calidora. Her brother Blade and her cousin Dagon were much the same. Although they were strikingly different in terms of appearance, Dagon being a towering giant and Blade being as skinny as a willow, they were one and the same in terms of love of battle. But, even they were clearly still weak to Madeline's appearance. Blade snickered, I might have to fight Ball for a taste of her first. Put a woman in front of them and they forget their purpose. We still need to secure placements to the world opening. First brother gained a seated entry because of our help in powering the treasure, but we won't be afforded the same privilege. How about you focus on figuring out how to beat him? Muttered Autumn in disgust. Tammy remained silent. She had never been close with her family, and quite frankly, they disgusted her. But, she knew she had to endure for now. Bedodum soon, she thought faintly. Madeline smiled at Diane, who's the one stirring trouble for who now? Diane beamed before turning to the box lookout. He nodded in their direction before speaking, Supreme Elders, don't you think it's about time we begin? This brat, he has no respect, a fiery rage erupted in the lookout from none other than an elder that looked to be the exact replica of Lehabim. Also, I'd like to say that after I win the tournament, I won't be taking anyone as my master. I have already sworn an oath to only have a single one in this lifetime. I hope you understand, Supreme Elders. Arrogant. When did the elders ever say they wanted you as a disciple? This kid. He has no idea how high the heavens are. The elders in the box were red with anger, but they slowly calmed down when they thought of something. Who's his master? This matter made the elders apprehensive, so they thought to ask first. Little one, may I ask who this esteemed master of yours is? A booming voice came from Elder Orbis. This is of course a simple matter, Elder. Although revealing this will bring me no end to troubles, I am not one to hide with my tail between my legs. My master is the 25th White Mother of the Celestial Deer sect. The atmosphere seemed to implode. 5 elders immediately appeared floating in the skies. Big Sect Elder Kami was still on the ground, but even he looked up towards Diane. Do you understand the ramifications of what you just said? Spoke an elderly woman wearing a robe with elegant green patterns marking the Green Blade sect. Of course, I do. In fact, I doubt anyone here understands this more than I do. However, as the sole successor of the Celestial Deer clan, I don't want to lurk in the shadows. I want everyone to know very clearly so that everything I do will lead to endless glory for my master. Madeline looked at Diane's profile, her eyes sparkling as she watched her man stand tall against the world. When I kill someone, everyone will know who I am. When my step shakes the heavens, everyone will know who I am. When I love, everyone will know who I am. A celestial aura erupted from Diane, shining crystals orbiting him and Madeline. Such confidence. Such arrogance. I want my enemies to know exactly how weak I am right now. I want them to despair when they realize there's nothing they can do to stop my rise. I want their hearts to shake in terror when they realize they knew who I was this whole time yet couldn't stop me from ripping their lives from them. That purity, that must be the ever elusive celestial will. The elders trembled. Celestial will was such a high attainment in the hierarchy of wills, that often people wouldn't even recognize it. If it wasn't for Diane's reveal, the elders would never know. Little one, are you interested in participating in the world tournament? Instead of joining one of our sects, I'm sure the others would agree to you helping our seeded geniuses participate. Our alliance is in need of your talents. Although you can soar anywhere, I'm sure you'd want to bring glory to your master by representing the region the Celestial Deer sect originated from, correct? World Tournament. Diane looked a bit confused. Forgive my fiancé, elders, until about 6 months ago, he was living in the human world. He is quite ignorant of martial world affairs. The elder's lips twitched. 6 months and he's already understood so many wills. He's already so strong. What about his array alchemy mastery? What kind of sick joke is this? Diane chuckled on the inside when he heard Madeline call him her fiancé. But, he assumed that this was just the culture of the martial world. He had no intention of refuting it. Looking through Madeline's memories of the past months, he knew she was someone he always wanted by his side. In a world like this one, if Madeline was just his girlfriend, it would give those with too much time on their hands an excuse to slander her reputation. But, if she was his fiancée, a woman promised to him, no one could say a word. The context was much different. So, he gladly accepted even though it would be odd in his mortal world. Even the Storm family geniuses looked at Diane in awe. Although Tammy knew about Diane's origins, she had never had a reason to tell them about it. It seems we much take him much more seriously. Dagon's eyes sharpened. I doubt if what she said is true. Doesn't that mean he's even more talented than first brother? Whispered Autumn. Ball had a serious expression on his face for what seemed like the first time ever. But it soon disappeared as he licked his lips. It's always best when they struggle. Chapter 76. You are listening at novelfull.audio. But, the big sect geniuses had a completely different reaction. Only 6 months. He was dead for at least 2 of them. Are you telling me he won my goddess's heart so quickly? I refuse to believe it. Lehabim boomed, Dyon, I don't care who you are. I challenge you to a match. Lehabim. Silence. Boomed a fiery-haired elder, don't mind my disciple little one. He's a bit hot-headed. The mouths of the other elders twitched, who do you think he got it from? Your voice was even louder than his. The elder of the Wind Blade sect shook her head and continued. You have no need to participate in this tournament, little one. Neither do the other seeded geniuses. We will grant you entry to the Legacy World Opening. If you're keen on fighting, I am sure there will be many battles in the Legacy World as you compete for the treasures. It's only a shame that you missed the Elven World. If you had access to those fruits it would be greatly beneficial. But, I'm sure your master left you with many things to replace that. Dyon watched on as these elders fawned over him with no small bit of disgust in his heart. Anyone looking on would think these elders to be amiable and caring, but where was this caring attitude when thousands of their students were getting slaughtered? Despite this, Dyon nodded his head. Then I'll listen to you, elder. There's only one thing I have left to take of here, Dyon said faintly. Dyon turned to the Sapientia family, causing Oliver to shiver. But, he sighed in relief when Dyon's eyes didn't seem trained on him. Dyon laughed, don't worry big brother Oliver. Although I can't promise Madeline will forgive you, I want you to know I have. How could I make her choose between her brother and me? Madeline's parents breathed a sigh of relief. The last weight on their chest had been lifted. Madeline harumphed, why would I want a big brother like him? Oliver smiled bitterly but said nothing. What he didn't hear was Madeline whisper. Thank you Dyon. Dyon smiled, didn't I say there's no need for thanks between us? Dyon's voice was carried by his will of wind, hiding it discreetly. Madeline, though, still felt endlessly swirling emotions within her. Forgive her family, even if Dyon allowed her a chance to do exactly that. For some reason, she couldn't bring herself to. Finally, Dyon's eyes trained on a seemingly ordinary old servant lady, causing her eyes to widen in shock. I assume you're from the Sapientia family main branch? Dyon asked faintly. The old lady was silent for a moment, before she looked to Madeline. A sweet voice that seemed like it couldn't possibly come from her rang out. You found quite a good partner little Madeline. Madeline trembled, Master. The appearance of the old lady slowly changed. Her hunched back became straight. Her wrinkled skin became younger. Soon, a woman just as beautiful as Madeline appeared, causing the Sapientia family to be overcome with shock. Madeline's parents immediately rushed to her and bowed deeply. Branch Sapientia family members greet Elder Sapientia. The crowd was stunned. Elder Sapientia. She looks like she couldn't be more than 20. What's going on? The elder nodded, before slowly rising into the air. The big sect elders were trembling. I can't sense her cultivation, they all thought at once. Finally, she appeared before Dyon and Madeline. Madeline released Dyon's hand and leaped forward, hugging her master tightly. The elder stroked Madeline's hair, it's okay little Madeline. I missed you too. Dyon smiled at this scene. After a few moments, Madeline finally composed herself. Dyon created another array formation for her to stand on, shaking his head. This girl is crazy, she just leaped into the air, completely forgetting she had no cultivation and we were 20 meters up. After Madeline was back to Dyon's side, the elder turned a curious gaze towards Dyon. What's your purpose for exposing me? Well, for one, no matter what I say, I can't always guarantee Madeline's safety. So, having everyone know my Madeline has more supporting her than just a dead clan successor is nothing but beneficial. Secondly, although I would like to spend a while together with Madeline first, I want her to return to the main Sapientia branch. I have plenty of resources to support her even if our needs were multiplied by thousands, but I will be headed to dangerous places and hunted by dangerous people. I want you to understand that Madeline is almost all I have in this world. Having the backing of a god-level clan like the Sapientia family is a good thing." The elder nodded in agreement, impressed with Diane's understanding of the situation. It seems he's not only hot-blooded. The elder had been previously disappointed in Diane when revealed his origins. Though they hadn't said anything, all their intentions to recruit him had faded with the wind. The only reason they had invited him to the Legacy World opening was likely as a method of keeping tabs on him and keeping their relationship amiable. It could be said that the moment Diane revealed himself, he had become a target. However, in choosing to save Madeline, he had already painted himself in a corner. He couldn't exactly not to save the first woman to truly enter his heart, right? Thirdly, I have awakened Madeline's constitution to 100%. I guarantee that your Sapientia God clan doesn't have that capability and thus has no one with comparable talent to her. As such, having a wife who will soon be the leader of a god clan sounds pretty amazing to me, doesn't it to you? Diane grinned. Although Madeline was slightly sad when she thought of how many dangers Diane would soon face without her, she steeled her resolve. She didn't know a lot about the Celestial Deer clan, but what she did know was that for an ancient god-level clan like them to be destroyed, their enemies must have been powerful. If she could help Diane by becoming an influential figure in the Sapientia God clan, she would do it. Chapter 77. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Thirdly, I have awakened Madeline's constitution to 100%. I guarantee that your Sapientia God clan doesn't have that capability and thus has no one with comparable talent to her. As such, having a wife who will soon be the leader of a god clan sounds pretty amazing to me, doesn't it to you? Diane grinned. Although Madeline was slightly sad when she thought of how many dangers Diane would soon face without her, she steeled her resolve. She didn't know a lot about the Celestial Deer clan, but what she did know was that for an ancient god-level clan like them to be destroyed, their enemies must have been powerful. If she could help Diane by becoming an influential figure in the Sapientia God clan, she would do it. 100%, the elder stared at Diane in shock. Although she knew the pill Diane had given to Madeline was extraordinary, she also knew that it was near impossible to awaken 100% of a god-level body, especially one in the top 10, let alone top 3. This couldn't be explained by it being a pill from the dead sect because pills lose potency over time. There's no way they would be as effective. The elder's burning gaze increased. Fourthly, I know the Sapientia clan will no longer dare bully her. Although before Madeline was a genius, she is incomparable to before. The Sapientia clan wouldn't use her as a pawn as they'd want to keep her within the clan. The fifth reason is because if an elder of your standing and power is willing to spend so many years as a servant just to watch over her, it must mean you care deeply for my Madeline. So, I can trust you. The elder nodded. It seems like you've got this all figured out. But then the elder froze as words shrouded in Diane's will of wind floated to her ears. After the Legacy World opening, it is likely there will be a major war. The Storm family is actually a defected branch of the Ragnar God clan and have a blood sacrifice technique from the Pakal God clan they plan on using to rise again. I suspect the reason for the early opening of the world is due to sacrificing the lives of many of the students who entered the Elven world. In addition, the Dayu clan is the source of the technique Akihiko was going to use to drain Madeline's potential. Even if they weren't going to massively benefit from the blood sacrifice technique, they would still attack now that I've revealed my connections with the Celestial Deer clan. As you probably know, the Dayu clan was part of the destruction of the Celestial Deer clan. In this war, I can only guarantee that the Sicarius family will be here and on my side. I have no way of contacting the Ragnar or Pakal God clans as a contingency plan, so I tell you all of this only so that you can spread the rumor to them. Once the war breaks out, there is no need for you to participate. I have my own plans. I can't guarantee that either God clan will appear, so it's imperative that the news spreads to both. Also, since they're unlikely to believe it, they won't mobilize their strongest experts, so there's a good chance that this won't end cleanly. Just make sure that Madeline leads a good life while I'm gone. Tell her I'll see her again at the World Tournament. The elder's eyes widened in shock. Just what is this boy at the center of? The day Diane had heard Cammy speaking to Dayu, he had already knew that something was brewing. But, he was only even more certain of it when he was healing Ava last night. In Ava's memories, he learned that her soul was attached to an object. That meant her family was very clear on her condition. And, after being shocked about the power behind her family, he knew very clearly that they wouldn't stand for not only losing their young master, but also having their young mistress be heavily injured. This meant that a clash between the Storm and Sicarius family was inevitable, but, with the variable of the Kami God clan and the hidden Dayu clan, Diane wasn't sure of which side would be the victor. So, he could only prepare for the worst. Oh, and also, Diane said out loud, don't believe I won't one day destroy the Sapientia God clan if they try to bar me from seeing Madeline. The elder felt a shiver run down her back, but she quickly composed herself. There's no need to worry. With Madeline's talent, it's likely she'll be able to do whatever she wants. My greatest regret is not being able to protect her back then. Will you still acknowledge me as your master, little Madeline? Madeline nodded heavily, tears glistening in her eye. I know it wasn't your fault, master, you tried your best. But, you're only one person. I understand the cruelty of the cultivation world. Good, good, the elder had tears streaming down her beautiful face. Although I haven't been much of a master to you, I can tell you that I truly do approve of your choice in partner. It is likely that the Ragnar God clan might want to force a marriage alliance like they did in the past. The elder glanced quickly at Diane, as though hinting something, but, I would rather die than allow you to be used as a chess piece again. Madeline nodded, gripping Diane's hand. As far as the Sapientia and Ragnar clans should be concerned, I'm already a taken woman. Diane smiled, looking into Madeline's beautiful eyes. But, it didn't escape his notice that she mentioned the Ragnar God clan despite having no idea about the current situation. Diane could only shake his head. It seems these God clans are really good at spreading wide-ranging pain. Diane looked to the elders. When does the Legacy World open, elders? The big sect elders were awakened from their state of shock. The Legacy World opens in just a week. The World Tournament will be in 2 years. Then Madeline and I will take our leave. There's no need to waste time on this tournament then. Little Black jumped into Diane's free arm before diving into his T-shirt. Just as Diane was about to bid farewell to Madeline's master, he realized she had already vanished. Not minding too much, Diane waved his hands and a majestic celestial deer appeared, carrying him and Madeline on its head. Chapter 78. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The geniuses left on the ground gripped their fists. Their fighting spirits had been lit. To be looked down on a boy years younger than them. A boy with no cultivation. A boy who had taken their love right in front of them. The rage in their hearts was palpable. He really did survive, Tammy thought. But suddenly, her head snapped. Her body trembled. Ava stared at the girl she had once called a friend, her eyes filled with hatred. She knew well that Tammy wasn't strong enough to save her, but to not even try. And to also know exactly what happened to her brother and not tell her. Ava saw nothing but a mortal enemy. Turning away from Tammy, she focused her will. She wasn't afraid of this so-called Storm family. She had never told Tammy about her origins, but she was clear on the fact that this Focus Academy was just a small stepping stone for her. If it wasn't for the fact her martial heart was so shaken by her dead brother, it was likely her cultivation would be far ahead of what it was now. In fact, she only began cultivating so early because she wanted power to find out what happened to her brother, effectively destroying her best potential for him. But, she'd focus on this tournament for now. She'd watch to her heart's content, with no fear in her heart. Not only could they not kill her in the open, she knew her father's temperament well. He was definitely on his way here. Tammy looked confused. She understood the anger, but where was this confidence coming from? Did she think she could stand up against the Storm family? But, then Tammy thought something that made her shiver. Did a normal family really raise two geniuses like Arios and Ava? What if she was confident because she knew her family was strong enough to protect her? If she was comparing her family to a pillar family, then Tammy had nothing to worry about. The true power of the Storm family could destroy Focus Academy 100 times over. But, if Ava's family was stronger than that, strong enough to contend with the true them, that would ruin everything. Tammy looked at Ball with endless resentment. This was all his fault. Tammy bit her lip. I need to change my plan. I can't take this risk. Tammy knew that Ball would have no interest in a toy he had already played with, so Ava was safe for now. But, simply not bothering Ava from now on wouldn't fix the situation. This situation was getting more and more complicated. Diane closed the door to his room, choosing to use a concealment and defensive formation as opposed to his metal disc. He felt safer that way. Little Black flashed and entered Diane's storage ring. He didn't like being confined to such a small space. Madeline giggled, "Are you going to take that shirt off? It's still wet, you know. If you wanted me to take off my shirt, you just had to ask." Madeline smiled, then reclined in a chair, crossing her legs. The flash of soft skin Diane caught through the leg slit of the dress made his heartbeat quicken. "Well, go on. I'd better like what I see, or else I'll have to replace you." "Oh. So, you like playing games?" Diane smiled and walked to Madeline. He took off his shirt, causing Madeline's beautiful face to slightly redden. Her breathing quickened as Diane placed his hands on the arm rests of the chair. "So?" Diane asked. Madeline didn't seem to be listening as her delicate hand touched Diane's tan chest. Diane leaned forward and lightly kissed her neck, forcing Madeline to let out a breath. "Passable," she said faintly, rubbing her cheek against Diane's as if to ask for his lips. Diane gladly obliged, kissing her fiercely as he felt her hands wrap around his neck. Diane found his hands invaded by softness as they trailed their way up Madeline's dress, stopping on her irresistible hips and playing with the straps of her underwear. Madeline's hands grabbed the sides of Diane's cheeks, unwilling to let his lips go. Her soft moans filled the room. Although she had been cured, the disposition of her god-level body was inclined towards intimate contact. Add to the fact that she had been feeling pent up for weeks, and this release was exactly what she needed. Diane slowly pulled away, looking into Madeline's golden eyes. Diane grinned, "I have something I want you to wear." Madeline looked surprised, slightly embarrassed that Diane's hands were still under the straps of her underwear. Pulling back, Diane flicked his wrists and a pair of gray sweatpants and a white t-shirt appeared in Diane's hands. An incredulous look appeared on Madeline's face, before she burst into a fit of laughter. Diane's smile widened, "Once you try it, I promise you'll never want to wear anything else." Madeline said nothing else as she stood, allowing her dress to fall to the ground under Diane's disbelieving eyes. A pair of pure white undergarments appeared before Diane. It was laced and exquisite, but couldn't compare to the woman wearing it. The delicate curves, the supple skin, the deep ravine of her chest. It was all only made more enticing by the slight blush that covered her. "Don't get a boner, don't fuck it," Diane could only bitterly smile. Madeline giggled, pushing Diane onto the bed, "You might as well give me a clean pair of boxers too. It's only right I get the full experience." Diane had never felt so happy before. With a beaming smile he pulled out a pair. Madeline smirked and turned around, gently falling onto Diane's lap. Diane groaned, "She knows exactly what she's doing." Madeline slowly raised her hands to her back, unstrapping her bra and letting it fall from her shoulders. Diane's breathing was erratic as he pulled her tightly into his chest, almost imperceptibly rubbing his member against her. You're so rowdy, how am I supposed to change if you're holding on so tightly, Madeline said, trying to keep her voice from shaking. But Diane didn't seem to be listening as his hands found their way to her chest. Chapter 79. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Diane felt like he was in heaven. Madeline couldn't help a moan from her lips. She slowly slid her underwear down, letting Diane run his hands along her body. Diane couldn't help spinning her around, kissing her firmly. Madeline moaned as she felt Diane's strong hands grab onto her ass, pulling her into his lap. Diane looked up at the heavily breathing Madeline, grinning. It seems the winter solstice really took a toll on you, Madeline held on to Diane's face, looking down into his eyes with fervent passion. You're going to have to marry me before you get to have all of me. Diane smiled bitterly, but then he grinned, thinking of something. I wonder what would happen if I used my aurora to increase your sensitivity. An evil smile appeared on Diane's face. Why? Before Madeline could respond, a delicate flame had appeared in Diane's hand, slipping slowly along her leg. Diane turned Madeline around, gently kissing on her neck. A whisper sounded in Madeline's ear that made her shiver with endless pleasure. How about we get rid of all that pent-up frustration? Diane's hands continued gently teasing Madeline's legs, letting the aurora flame slowly increase her pleasure by manipulating her energy flow. Madeline was gasping for breath, digging her nails into Diane's arm. Just as she thought this couldn't possibly get any more intense, she felt Diane's hand finally reach her treasured place. Madeline gasped, "Diane." Diane shivered hearing her call, but that just spurred him on. Soon, Madeline was sleeping soundly in Diane's sweatpants and shirt. Diane gently moved her hair from her face, letting her sleep on his bare chest. He soon fell into a relaxed sleep too. Are you certain, Qinglei? An elder shrouded in darkness spoke with a raspy voice. Yes, father. I am certain, he said. He was a member of the Celestial Deer sect. Since he's so confident, it is likely that our current clan strength can't deal with the life-saving treasures he has. Father, he killed an essence-gathering expert like it was nothing. I'm afraid if we want to deal with this situation, we'll have to awaken the ancestors from their slumber. Absolutely not. What kind of laughingstock would we be using those experts against a child? However, you are right. His threat cannot be underestimated. According to the records, the 25th White Mother was a very prideful person. I am certain that she would rather the whole sect die out than let someone subpar be the successor. His future will be bright. He must die as soon as possible, the raspy voice said faintly. Should we enlighten the other clans? Impossible. Although we won the war, the toll was heavy. For now, we'll see if we can handle the situation ourselves. Did you receive a quota to enter the land? Yes, father. I hid myself well. I managed to earn an inconspicuous spot. Good. If I'm not wrong, this opening is special. Those foolish big sects don't even know what they're getting themselves into. If it wasn't for the Pakal clan's blood sacrifice technique, they could have spent 10,000 years more trying to properly charge their treasure before finally managing to open the world. Qinglai's eyes widened. Just who made that world? If I'm not wrong, he or she was definitely an existence that surpassed the Tao formation stage. Qinglai drew in a sharp breath. In fact, I'm certain that if it wasn't for the world wanting to be found, those weak sects would have never even come close to it. What I don't know is why it wanted to be found. Qinglai remained silent. I'll give you a treasure. When fighting for the inheritance, it will come in handy. But, you must remember that your top priority is to kill this successor. Although such an inheritance would speed up our comeback, I believe the opening of a world of this magnitude wouldn't escape the notice of the God clan younger generation. Although you are talented, you've been stifled by our lack of resources. Until we can fix that, you won't be enough to fight them, I'm afraid. I understand, father. The Dayu clan will rise again. AI. Although you won't be able to gain the main inheritance, there should be plenty of other treasures. Gain what you can while protecting your life. You are our future. Qinglei nodded heavily, bearing the responsibility on his shoulders. The alluring aroma of food slowly woke Madeline up. Opening her eyes, she found a banquet laid out on a table that definitely wasn't in the room before. Madeline's eyes widened, giving a confused look to Diane, who was looking at her with a gentleness that made her blush. "It's just the two of us, why'd you bring all this food?" Diane was stunned by Madeline's appearance. Her cascading hair. The way her braless chest bounced through his white t-shirt. The adorable look she had wearing sweatpants too many sizes bigger than her. Diane found himself intoxicated. "Oh." Diane said with a grin, "This feast is actually for me, but you can have some of it if you want." Madeline looked at Diane like he was crazy. But, the look soon disappeared as she watched him eat plate after plate after plate. "You're a glutton," Madeline said exasperatedly. Between bites, Diane unleashed his devilishly handsome smile. Soon, Diane had Madeline in his arms as he fiddled with a projector system. Madeline rested her cheek against Diane's, watching him work. "What exactly is this for?" she couldn't help asking. "I'm about to set up some of my favorite movies for us to watch together," Diane said with a smile. "Movies?" Madeline looked confused. She had learned a whole bunch of new things about the human world from Diane. Sweatpants was one of them, and she had to admit that they were very comfortable. "Sometimes it surprises me what your martial world does and doesn't have. But, I guess it would be kind of weird if such powerful people wanted to watch people do superhuman things they could already do." Madeline gently placed her hands on Diane's after he released the projection into the air and wrapped his arms around her. "Movies are just plays on a screen. They tell stories about the most fantastical things. Although they're probably decidedly less fantastical here." Madeline watched with curiosity as a list of options appeared. "Choose whichever one calls out to you the most," said Diane with a smile. Madeline thought for a moment, "The one with the short man looks odd, let's watch that one." Diane selected The Lord of the Rings and watched in satisfaction as Madeline lost herself in its world. Chapter 80. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Tammy stood silently, looking on to an elder and a young man who were sparring with each other. Soon, the young man let out a roar before using the last of his stamina. The elder calmly reflected the blow, allowing the young man to catch his breath. "Your rate of improvement is impressive. Go and rest. I don't want you cultivating for the next few days so you can be in optimal condition for the world opening. You're our future, you must do your best to gain this inheritance. I'm sure you understand that we slowed our plans substantially by diverting power to ensure its opening. Don't let us down." The young man stood tall after catching his breath. He was clearly a man of few words, but his aura was suffocating. His blue eyes were sharp and his blonde hair reached the ground. His muscles rippled as he stretched to his full 2.5 meter height. After nodding towards Tammy, the young man slowly left. "Big Brother's progress is indeed impressive." Without turning to Tammy, the elder's voice rang out. "Your talent only pales to your elder brother, Tammy. Both you and your brother will do us proud," he said faintly. After reaching a throne, the elder sat down slowly. "So, what brings you here today?" "Father, I believe Baal has put us in a bad situation." How so?" "In the Elven Forest, he almost raped and killed Ava, the younger sister of a boy we killed for discovering our plans that time." The elder's aura darkened. "I hope you're not asking me to seek revenge for your friend. Although Baal is unruly, he is still a talent. So talented that even Dagon or Blade might not be a match for him if he's serious. I allow you all to compete amongst yourselves. Once you can defeat him, then you can seek your own revenge." Tammy shook her head. "That isn't it, father. This Ava survived and is also not scared of appearing before us. Even to the point of glaring at me. I'm sure you can realize what that could mean as much as I do." The elder's aura sharpened. "This could indeed be troublesome. You may go. I'll also allow you to choose a suitable punishment for Baal. Do not cripple or kill him, the elder's voice sounded faintly. After Tammy left, the elder fell into deep thought. It seems we must prepare for the worst case. War may be inevitable. Let's hope that this girl just doesn't understand how high the heavens are, but if it's a case of her having suitable backing to oppose us, I may need to alert the Supreme Elders. Outside the room, Tammy was clenching her fists. This could work in my favor too, this could work. Let's go out tomorrow, Madeline said, lying comfortably in Diane's arms. Diane was quite enjoying the time they spent in his room. In fact, he was quite content with staying in, but he couldn't say no to Madeline. Sure, we can go, he said with a smile. I haven't been anywhere in the martial world besides here honestly. Madeline looked confused. Didn't you leave and find a master? This secret doesn't matter too much anyway, but even if it did I wouldn't mind telling you. The celestial deer sex remains are actually at the bottom of Focus Lake. I found it shrouded in a formidable concealment formation. Oh. So that's what happened. Madeline never asked about Diane's adventures or questioned how he got things done. In fact, she was never surprised when he did something amazing. She had birthed a strange confidence in Diane. Then I'll bring you to some good places on the main continent, she said with a smile. All right. Then we'll do that. Madeline turned to Diane with a mysterious glint in her eyes. So you're not going to tell me? Diane looked at Madeline, confused. Tell you what? How did you make it feel so good? She asked with a slight blush. Diane shuddered, thinking back to when he was still at the bottom of Focus Lake. He had been trying to sort through his master's memories, when he stumbled upon a whole section of dual cultivation techniques. That was also where he learned how beneficial it was to take the virginity of someone with a god-level constitution. But, he was severely disturbed. Suddenly gaining thousands of years of sexual experience. Good. Stumbling upon memories of two massive beasts copulating. Not so good. The vomit was barely held back by watching his master have sex in her human form. But, even though she was exceptionally beautiful, it just made him feel dirty. That was his master, after all. Not some porn star. She was a person he should see as his own mother. She was clearly too close to death to think about filtering some memories out, shivered Diane. But then Diane thought about how his master had time to put a block on some of the memories she thought Diane wasn't ready for yet, then that just sent him down another rabbit hole. My master's a pervert. Diane shook his head viciously, confusing Madeline. Diane decided to tell Madeline the version that didn't include bestiality. The celestial deer sect had thousands of dual cultivation techniques. So, I thought if I fused the best circulation methods with celestial will and my innate aurora flame, I could amplify their effects even more. What could be more effective at manipulating energies than the aurora flame? Not only does it have a healing factor that gives a pleasant feeling, considering its use in manipulating precious resources into pills and manipulating energies to form arrays, using it to circulate particular paths is easy. Madeline shook her head bitterly. Diane spoke of manipulating cultivation techniques like it was as easy as breathing. He was clearly unaware that the same task he did on a whim was impossible for most people, let alone amplifying their effects. But then, Madeline smirked, are you trying to tell me all you need to do is touch a woman and she'll feel hundreds of times more sensitive than I used to on the winter solstice? Pervert. Diane grinned, I didn't even think of that, but now that you say it, I guess I'll have to try it out. Important announcement below. We're introducing a chapter reward system. If there are any changes to it in the future, I will let you guys know.